Hey, good morning and Merry Christmas. Thank you for taking a few minutes and allowing me to be part of what you are doing today. You know, we've been looking at prophecies about Jesus from the Old Testament, and we very intentionally saved what the prophet Micah said for this morning. So Micah 5:2 says this, "But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, though you are small among the clans of Judah, out of you will come for me one who will be ruler over Israel, whose origins are from of old, from ancient times." It's the fulfillment of those verses that are going to sound very familiar from Luke chapter 2, beginning in verse 4. "So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. And he went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him, and was expecting a child. It was while they were there that the time came for the baby to be born. And she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. And she wrapped him in cloths, and she placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them." You know, it's what we celebrate today. And I got to tell you, I love that story. But I also know that I can be a little familiar with it. And I can kind of miss the moment because I'm so familiar with that story. So every once in a while I look at it worded differently. And so let me share with you this story in the words of Christian author Ken Geyer. "The night is still when Joseph creaks open the stable door. The stench is pungent, humid. A small oil lamp flickers to dance shadows on the wall. It's a disquieting place for a woman in the throes of childbirth. Mary is far from home. She's far from family, far from what she had expected for her firstborn. But she doesn't complain. You know, it's just a relief to finally stop. So she leans back against the wall. Her feet are swollen. Her back is aching. The contractions are growing stronger and growing closer together. Joseph's eyes are darting around the stable. That feeding trough will have to do for a crib, and hay will serve as the mattress, and blankets, his robe will have to do. And those rags that are hanging out to dry, they're going to help." A gripping contraction doubles Mary over and sends him racing for a bucket of water. The birth is not going to be easy for the mother or the child. For every royal privilege for this son ended at conception. A scream from Mary knifes through the calm of the silent night, and Joseph returns breathless, water sloshing from the wooden bucket. Sweat is pouring from Mary's face as her husband, the most unlikely midwife in all Judea, stands by her side. The involuntary contractions are not enough, and Mary has to push with all of her strength. With one final effort and a long sigh, her labor is over. The Messiah, he has arrived. The Son of the Most High God has been born to a lowly Jewish girl. The baby chokes and coughs. Joseph instinctively turns him over and clears his throat. And then the baby cries. Mary reaches for the shivering child, and she lays him on her chest, and his helpless cries subside. His tiny head bobs around on the unfamiliar terrain. This will be the first thing the infant king learns. Mary can feel his racing heartbeat as he gropes to nurse. Deity nursing from a young maiden's breast. Could anything be more puzzling or more profound? Joseph sits exhausted, silent, full of wonder. The baby finishes and sighs, and the divine word is reduced to a few unintelligible sounds. And then, for the first time, his eyes fix on his mother's. For the first time, deity straining to focus. The light of the world squinting. Tears pool in Mary's eyes as she touches his tiny hand. And hands that once sculpted mountain ranges cling to her finger. She looks up at Joseph, and through a watery veil their souls seem to touch. He crowds closer, cheek to cheek with his betrothed, and together they stare in awe at the baby Jesus, whose heavy eyelids begin to close. been a long journey. The king is tired. And so with barely a ripple of notice, God stepped into the warm lake of humanity without protocol, without pretension. Where you might have expected angels, there were only flies. Where you would have expected perhaps heads of state, there were only donkeys, a few haltered cows, a nervous band of sheep, and a string of curious field mice. Except for Joseph, there was no one to share Mary's pain or her joy in that moment. No, there were angels announcing the Savior's arrival, but only to a band of blue-collar shepherds who were out in the field. And yes, there was this magnificent star that shone in the sky to mark his birthplace, but only 3 foreigners bothered to look up and follow it. Thus, in the little town of Bethlehem, that one silent night, the royal birth of God's Son tiptoed quietly by as the world slept. So wrap our injured flesh around you, breathe our air and walk our sod, rob our sin, make us holy, perfect Son of God. Welcome to our world. Hey, thanks again for stopping to remember. And I hope hearing this story in a little bit different way helps you celebrate this day. Merry Christmas.